All right, what's going on, everybody? Demarco Crum here with the Strength with Purpose show. Got my co-host Laura Mahoney here, and we're here as always to help you become your strongest self and have a little fun along the way. Laura, how we doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm
Awesome.
excited for today's short episode.
Mm.
It'll be a fun one, and this will technically be my first reaction video, quote unquote reaction video. I know we're pretending like we're super high profile
Right.
YouTubers and influencers like, oh, I'm reacting to this, but this is like the direct reaction to something that occurred kind of to me, quote unquote.
Right.
And just to give you super quick background, and we'll get into it. I have been pretty active on YouTube lately. I've been doing the podcast with Laura. We're back in the game on that. Trying to give you guys, wonderful, actionable content. Actionable takeaways, strategies, tactics that you can use in order to, maintain your health and fitness through busy chapters of life, whether it be having a family, running a business, busy job, just in general being a busy human. And I've also been posting a lot of YouTube shorts. I've been putting up little exercise demonstration videos, and basically it's kills two birds with one stone. One thing is helps with engagement with the channel, which is cool, and then the other thing is I then add those to my exercise library for Trainerize, the software that I use
Oh, gotcha.
for my clients. So it's good. And
Cool.
a lot of the videos, I'm not really a fan of how a lot of them are performed, not gonna lie. And so I just film a quick clip of myself doing a movement or a client. There's actually a lot of ones of my clients doing them. And then I just upload it, put it on YouTube, put the link in Trainerize, and then there it is. And then I can show you, how I like to coach the movement, the way I prefer the movement to be performed. And I try to not label things like better or superior. Like I don't care about that. It's just, I very much want to honor and respect what I've learned, obviously from my coaches over the years. So this is the backdrop. So I posted a video of a plank, just a very standard elbow plank, elbow plank position, and didn't think anything of it. Video got a decent amount of views. I wasn't really worried too much about the views, but I posted this video, and I have blacked out the person's name, so I'm not going to drop the name or the YouTube handle. So although if you dig enough, you could probably find it, but I'm not going to put this person on blast directly. Anyways, I got a comment on the video, and the first part of the comment, it was a long comment, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it said, "Planks are made up for lazy people that need to feel like they accomplished something. You're isometrically contracting your abdominal muscles. Sure, that's cool, but what is that actually getting you? The isometric contraction, one in which you contract your abs but don't move, is less than 1/3 of the picture when it comes to muscle growth, because there's a concentric and eccentric part of the movement that you're missing out on. And it could be argued from some interpretations from the scientific literature that the isometric is the least growth promoting of all of them." That was the basic gist of it. There was a little bit more added to that more or less kind of repeated what this person was saying. And whenever somebody, calls me out like that, I try to, have a good conversation, and banter. So I'm going to throw the ball over to Laura and get her kind of reaction to that and feedback on that, and then I'll come back in with what I responded.
Yeah, I'm actually more amazed that somebody knew how to explain that really well.
Yeah,
That's like number one. Usually when there's like reactions like that, it's like there's more opinions in it. There's like a lot more heat, and they're not usually science backed. So I'm at least giving that person credit for having like science terminology, and I thought that was a very thorough explanation. However, maybe that's true for the larger muscle groups, but for your core, that's supposed to stabilize you. That's supposed to hold your whole body up. It doesn't need to, you don't need to do crunches all day long to have a strong core. You need to train all the areas of your core to create like I was thinking of like your core like the tree trunk. You need to have
yeah,
a solid tree trunk to support the rest of your body. And that needs to be strong. And usually it's something along the lines of like planks or something that does have an isometric hold to it. And then, like for anything, you could put icing on the cake. You could do crunches or leg lifts or something else to add on to that. But the foundation for your core is the plank. And that should be is clearly not for lazy people, and there's clearly a very good purpose and reasoning for it. And I think that goes for like no matter what stage you're in. Like I'm always thinking of, especially on this show, right? Like rebuilding my core after having babies. I definitely couldn't do bicycles. I couldn't do any kind of like twisting motion. Um, Even when I was pregnant for that matter too, like a way to keep my core, keep that quote unquote like foundation strong was by doing planks. And that was the easiest way to like I kind of feel how everything worked together when my entire midsection felt disconnected. Um, I'll leave it at that for right now. You
Yeah,
go
no,
for it.
I
Yeah.
think that's great. I agree 100% with everything you said, obviously. And again, you have the unique perspective of someone that has given birth to two tiny humans. So
Mhm.
you can appreciate, understand, and value how important a really strong core is. And obviously we're talking when we say core, obviously there's a lot of coaches that will give you different terminologies. I like to think of it as just like Laura said, the tree trunk. Your rectus abdominis, you've got your internal obliques, your external obliques, and then your erector spinae. They form kind of that cylinder around your spine. Other coaches, I've heard strength coaches, high level strength coaches say from your nipples to your knees, they'll count your
Okay.
lats, they'll count your
Yep.
like serratus anterior, they'll count glutes, hamstrings, all that, as far as particularly in regards to dynamic movements, sprinting, throwing, jumping, throwing a kick, throwing a punch, etc. You know, we could argue about that all day as to like quote unquote what the core is, and then the
Yeah.
transverse abdominis, like the deep core
That's
muscle.
yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up.
We can, yeah, we can, and again, the pelvic floor, obviously there's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. So just for the sake of today, we are talking about that cylinder, that tree trunk that
Mhm.
Laura mentioned. Again, rectus abdominis, obliques, internal and external, and then the erector spinae. You throw hip flexors in there too if you want to. Depending on
Yeah,
how
transverse
you're.
abdominis goes in there too. That's like the innermost layer, and I think that's the one where the like the planks and some other isometric core exercises really hits because it's like a corset that goes around your stomach. It doesn't really build by contracting move or contraction exercises. It builds by holding positions like isometric exercises. And that's the
Yeah.
deepest layer too. So you think that like that's literally the foundation. That should be the important one. And that's how that one
Oh, yeah.
builds and holds yourself together is by a plank-like motion.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I think it's interesting, when you think about what the core does, which Laura basically just said the same thing, I'll word it in a way that I was taught from my coaches, very kind of the same way to get to the mountain. Maybe just, maybe just calling it a slightly different thing, but it's the same concept. The core's primary function is to generate stiffness in the trunk and
Yeah.
stabilize the spine during movement, or in a plank in particular, like holding an isometric position, right? Holding a position, whether it's a plank, whether it's a side plank, whether it's a hollow body hold, whether it's a hollow body hang, a knee march, holding up an isometric knee march, bring it up there, hold it up, everything's firing to hold that position. So, and again, you think about again athletics, especially that stiffness and that tension here. That's what allows us to move those limbs in an explosive manner and generate force, produce force. Again, throwing a punch, throwing a kick, throwing a javelin. Sprinting, all that stuff. You see videos. There's really, really cool videos out there of high level athletes training. And this is going to sound kind of weird out of context, but like when they don't have a shirt on, you can see like a sprinter, for example, every step that they take, you can
Yeah.
see the core firing and bracing and getting tight with each step. And again, part of it is they're very lean. Obviously, they have a very low body fat percentage. So you maybe won't see this on everybody, but it's interesting to see them, move and train, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see it. And then just one of my favorite little exercises is take your hands and put them kind of at your lower back, and then just walk and feel the firing of those spinal erectors, the erector spinae. You take a step with your right foot, you're going to feel that left one firing to stabilize on the opposite side, so you don't just collapse over, like a sack of potatoes.
Mhm.
So it is interesting, with this person's perspective. And just to go further into it, I wanted to have a good conversation. I love conversations with people, and I actually really enjoy conversations when people don't agree with me, or vice versa. Because one of two things is going to happen. Usually, I'm going to learn something, and maybe my position might change a little bit, or I'm going to learn something, and then maybe my position will be even stronger. It can be one or the other. I don't think of it as like winning versus losing. I don't really care about that. I get tremendous results for myself and my clients, and those speak for themselves. So that being said, there are different approaches to the game. So I came out very kind. I said, I really appreciate your position on this, your opinion on this. I agree with you. Simply holding a plank gets silly / monotonous. And then I went into basically my argument, which was a plank is a foundational exercise, just like Laura said, but we don't just stop at the plank. We're not just, I agree, it got out of proportion, things got out of hand in the fitness industry several years ago, where we got into these like 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute plank challenges. And, it's cool that somebody could do that, not to say it's not very impressive. And I fell into that trap myself earlier in my training career. I had a client who, was 61 years old. He could hold a 3 minute plank. That's fucking impressive. I don't care what you say. That's just awesome. And he maintained flat back position and incredibly strong. And it was very impressive. However, over time, as my training philosophy has changed, as I've learned more, I now use the plank as that foundational exercise, plank and hollow body hold. And then when we learn how to generate that stiffness in the core, how to get into that flat back position, how to, really lock in on that lumbo-pelvic positioning and control, then this person is correct. Movement is really the key. That's so true. A squat, a deadlift, a pull-up, a pullover, adding a plank, putting a foam roller down, doing, saw the log or body saws. When you start adding movement, then you can really take things to the next level. So that's where I totally agree with this person with what they said, where movement's the key. But I think the plank is still where you start, because if you don't understand how to generate stiffness and tension in your core and stability and to stabilize, then you start adding movement on top of that, you're going to get hurt. I say that as somebody who has gotten hurt, myself when I was younger, and I didn't understand the biomechanics of lifting. When I first started, before I became a trainer, and I was just a young high schooler, ego lifting. So what was interesting was, I came out, tried to be compassionate, and then the conversation quickly devolved into, he said, like, LMAO, it's so hilarious to see the way lazy people refuse to let go of how useless the plank is. And he goes on to, like, it's almost as bad as people that think training with battle ropes is a good workout. And then he said, like, oh, please tell me you don't train with battle ropes. That's so pathetic. And then I came back and I said, listen, man, I don't judge other people's training styles. I think every tool has a place and a purpose. Yep. And it's just we're too generalizing. We're generalizing too much here. You've got to talk about what is the goal.
Right.
What's point A, what's point B, and how are we going to get there? That's very different for everybody.
And also, like, what do you like? Sorry, I'm cutting you off. Like,
what do you like? Exactly.
If you don't enjoy doing something and it's in your program, you're probably not going to adhere to it. So find things that you enjoy doing, then you're going to more likely stick with it, and then maybe even try something else that you've never tried before, or had to gain the courage to try and add into your program.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's another very valid point. Because again, you're talking about personal training with, it's a person and a person training together. You should like the stuff you're doing.
Right.
So I completely agree with that. And I think there's a balance that's not easy to hit. We do our best. The stuff that we need to do and the stuff that we like to do. When we can get really in sync on both of those, it's a beautiful thing. You can get amazing results. You get that buy-in, and amazing things can happen. You can reach some amazing levels of strength, and hit awesome PRs and kick ass. The other thing is that hypertrophy is not always the primary goal for a lot of people that I train with. And I think that's one little nuance there to consider. Again, if you take someone that's untrained and you give them a strength program, they're going to build some muscle. Like I don't want to use, I hate speaking absolutes. It's almost a certainty, assuming they're getting enough calories, getting enough protein, they're probably going to build some muscle. And that being said, they're not going to turn into the Incredible Hulk, right? You've had this conversation, as I have, Laura, like, oh, I want to get strong, I want to tone, but I don't want to get bulky. And the thing is, when I was 18 years old, I weighed 135 pounds. And from 18 years of lifting heavy weights, progressively overloading my system, eating a lot of calories, a lot of protein and carbs. I have managed to get myself up to 170, 171. At my biggest, I was at 195. I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't the ideal body composition for me. That was, I was deep into dad life, early phases, and the quality of the nutrients I was taking in were certainly not as high as they normally are. So that being said, that kind of like 175 to 180 range is kind of where I've been. But that was 18 years and intentionally trying to get as strong and big as I can. And you don't just throw a few weights around and then Hulk out. Obviously, that's not how it works. It takes time, and everyone's bodies are different. Some people adapt differently than others to training programs. So again, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but again, hypertrophy is not necessarily everyone's goal. And then on top of that, this person said, oh, squats and deadlifts are more functional, as far as core. And again, we can go down that road if we want to, but again, if you don't understand how to generate the stiffness in your core, how to breathe and how to brace, then you're going to get yourself hurt under a load.
Right, you can't load it that much.
You can't load it. Yeah, and you're going to get hurt. I mean, you see it all the time. Someone sets up for a heavy squat, they get down, or heavy deadlift, they get in position, and then they just yell or scream and let all the air out in the critical part of the lift where the stability is so important. That start position on the deadlift or that bottom position on the squat. And there's type it in on YouTube. There's a bunch of videos out there, ego lifting, and people don't understand the breathing, the bracing aspect, and people get hurt, and it's really unfortunate. So I came back with basically what I just said. And then he said, "Oh yeah, well, doing one plank is not valuable, just like doing one squat." And again, he's basing this off of a demonstration video, not
Yeah, that's like the
I
hard
didn't.
part of this. Like, let's just not like
Yeah, it
kill
wasn't a
everybody
program.
in the world.
Yeah, and there's a lot of assumptions that were made on this
Yeah,
person's part. And then the last thing I said there's far too much nuance that you're skipping over, my friend. Dr. Stuart McGill, a spine biomechanics expert, recommends side planks for building core strength,
yeah,
to help stabilize the lower back and get out of pain. He's been doing this for 40 years.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
researched, spines. I mean, he has like several books, and high level lifters have used his protocols to get out of extreme back pain and then
right.
hit PRs in lifts.
Mhm.
Dr. Lane Norton, do you know Lane
Yeah,
Norton?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he actually went and saw Dr. McGill,
yeah,
utilized his protocol, and then went on. He had like excruciating back pain, like he couldn't even tie his shoes.
yeah,
And then he went on and broke a Masters world record in the deadlift. So it's like, again, we're just generalizing too much here. And then he came back with, some medical professionals encourage people to eat Beyond Beef and get vaccines. Big fucking deal. So at that point, it just devolved. Obviously,
yeah.
we're like we've
Gone with
entered
that.
another realm.
Yeah,
And again, I at that point, I think I said something trying to be, a little bit respectful, but I kind of was like, all right, well, we're done here. Obviously,
yeah.
planks make people lazy. Just because a doctor says you should get a vaccine doesn't mean you should get a vaccine.
Right. Yeah.
We're in la la land now.
I feel like people
And
need like places to just like go rant.
yeah.
Rant
By
from
the way,
the
I've never had a doctor tell me to go eat a Beyond Whopper. I don't go to the doctor all the time, but my wife's a physician, and then so as a result, I know a bunch of her colleagues. No one is trying to shove an Impossible Beef hot dog, down my throat. So just to let you guys know, they're. So, but it was crazy. I mean, it was just,
Yeah,
it very quickly devolved and was just like, what? Um,
yeah, yeah. And with exercise, there's levels to everything. That's I think the key people need to remember. And even so, like I've called my like crazy training phase, and I was doing like so much and so many new types of movements, and I was trying to make like the hardest hit workouts of all time. But I also realized after the fact, when I kind of get out of that phase, I did lose my foundational strength in a lot of movements. Like
yes.
a single leg glute bridge was hard, and it shouldn't have been hard because I could deadlift 300 pounds. I didn't register that. I wasn't doing
I
planks. I
know.
thought my core should have been stronger. It wasn't as strong as I thought it was going to be. So I still had to like go back to the foundations and continue doing those within my program, even though I was changing up my program a little bit, but I still wanted to be strong. That was always number one. So I still had to do the foundational movements, even though I was still squatting 200 pounds. Like
Absolutely.
they do go hand in hand no matter what.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's absolutely accurate. And on top of that, I've reached a point where I just hit a PR on the kettlebell bent press.
Yeah.
I did 3 reps on the 40 kilogram bell, so it's 88
Yeah.
pounds. It's almost half my body weight.
Mm.
Pretty awesome. I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But I have been having a little bit of hip low back stuff going on. So I went and saw a physical therapist, and guess what they programmed for me to do?
Yeah.
Work like single leg glute
Exactly.
bridges, core
Yeah.
activation stuff. So
Mm.
you're never like outgrow that stuff.
No.
And I'll say one more thing. Laura actually has to step off in a moment, and I will too, because I'm not going to sit here and talk to myself. But and I have some videos coming out that are going to really highlight this. For me, the plank is where we start, plank and hollow body hold.
Yes.
And then we progress from there, and it's a simple progression. Like for a plank, for example, we get you into the elbow plank, learn how to stabilize and hold that position. We take you up into the high plank. And then from there, we can add movement. We can do the body saw. We can do the,
I
spell
like single
we
leg
can do the
things,
ball. We
single
can
leg
move the
plank. Yep.
legs. Exactly. Then we take that into the push up, and we really lock in a good
Yep.
hard style locked in push up, and then a
Mhm.
one arm push up, and then a one arm one leg push up, and then a hollow body hold into a hollow body hang into a pull up. So there's a lot of progressions, and I think this ties it up perfectly. Like, we don't just do planks all day. Like, that would just be terrible. And again, props to this person for coming at me with a little bit of legit science and nomenclature, but there's a little bit more to it. So,
Yeah. Some things are still missing.
exactly. So, again, there's more to it than that. I want to thank all of you so much for tuning in. I hope you got value from this. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up, the like, all that good stuff. And until next time, we'll catch you
See
on
ya.
the flip side.